Mike Evans and Lavonte David are finally getting the respect they deserve. Kind of. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow everything on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. My co-host, the one, the only, Mr. David Harrison on Twitter at DHarrison82. We are both credentialed media members covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can find my work over at SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Find David's stuff over at Sports Illustrated's BucsGameDay.com, part of their Fan Nation section covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers who we want to show our continued support and appreciation of. Thank you, guys. Everydayers, you're the best.
There's actually a lot of David Harrisons in the world. I went to high school with a David Harrison.
No relation. You are the David Harrison.
There's a former Indiana Pacers player named David Harrison who is the first person that comes up if you Google that name. And I've made it my life's mission to change that fact.
Yes,
it's not going very well.
Because he needs your permission to be called David Harrison. That's how I feel about this situation.
Not true at all. More links between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Dallas Cowboys and a Dallas Cowboys running back, but more on that in a little bit. First, we're going to talk about two guys we've spoken a lot about this week, this month, this year, a lot of years, and how overlooked and disrespected they have been. Talking to you, Keenan Allen. Well, they're starting to get the kind of recognition Bucs fans have been asking for in a roundabout sort of way. NFL Network's Good Morning Football listed their all underrated teams for offense and defense, and the Bucs were represented on both lists. For the offense, the Gumpfa crew listed quarterback Jared Goff, wrong, running back Najee Harris, running back Ramondre Stevenson, wide receiver. Oh my goodness. You forgot about Ramondre. Anyway, wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, Mike Evans. The crowd cheered. Wide receiver, Allen Lazard, wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, and tight end, Cole Kmet. My reaction to this, James, is that Jared Goff is not underrated. Holy crap. I just want to give Dan Campbell every Coach of the Year award for making a professional NFL opinion analyst person say that Jared Goff is underrated. Dan Campbell deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for that fact alone, because what Dan Campbell did is basically what Brian Daboll did in New York, is cover up a very, very subpar quarterback with his offense and did a very good job of it. So I would say, if anything, Dan Campbell is underrated, not Jared Goff. Najee Harris, I agree with. I agree with. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers had some issues in their running game coordination, their offensive line, all that stuff. I think Najee Harris is very talented, but like most running backs, you can't do it alone. Like the days of Barry Sanders are pretty much gone, and that's just kind of how it is. Allen Lazard, I don't know. If he ever plays without Aaron Rodgers, maybe we can see if he was actually underrated or not. Terry McLaurin, absolutely. Mike Evans, absolutely, because they're basically going year for year on caliber of quarterback. And they're like Terry McLaurin's following the Mike Evans pattern of quarterback play. Except he wasn't able to get 1,000 yards his rookie season. Cole Kmet, I guess I'll agree, because I don't really have an opinion on Cole Kmet, which I guess supports the thought that he's underrated.
Yeah, I kind of snickered at the Jared Goff pick, because we've seen good Goff, but we've seen what normal Goff is as well, and he's far closer to normal Goff than the Goff he was last year. I just said Goff a lot of times. I'm not gonna categorize him as underrated, and I'm kind of leaning with you on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let me see him do it a couple more times. I think he's a really, really good receiver, but I think he's appropriately rated for the production we've seen thus far in his career. But yeah, like you said, Alan Lazard, let's see him without Aaron Rodgers and see how underrated he is. But Mike Evans obviously is the one that jumps out because he is a guy that has done it consistently year in, year out, every single year, regardless of quarterback, and continuously gets overlooked. And that's something we talked about a lot with the Madden ratings. But David, they also listed their all underrated defense with defensive end Brian Burns, linebacker Lavonte David, defensive tackle Javon Hargrave, defensive end Romeo Aquara, linebacker Demario Davis, defensive end Dorrance Armstrong, cornerback Tyson Campbell, and defensive back Marcus Epps. My biggest takeaway from this one is this piggybacks perfectly off of what Evan and I talked about on yesterday's episode on WTSP Wednesday, talking about the ESPN player rankings for each position, where Lavonte David and Demario Davis are kind of neck and neck in terms of how productive they are, how reliable they are, how consistent they are, and how constantly overlooked they are. So while it's nice that Mike Evans and Lavonte David were getting this praise and getting this love on Good Morning Football, it's also really frustrating that it had to be under the guise of, yeah, we know these guys are underrated, so we're going to talk about them this one time. But after this, we're going to continue to just jam Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers down your throat until you just uncontrollably vomit, because that's all we can ever talk about ever at all times, always.
Awesome. Sorry, I missed that part. Yeah, Lavonte David, I actually made an argument a couple years back. I remember we talked about Lavonte David being incredibly underrated, and we had like all these people coming through the show, like other media members. And I remember specifically Paige DeMacos of the Draft Network, talking about how underrated Lavonte David was. And we turned it into a social media clip, and it kind of blew up a little bit and made the rounds. And like everybody was like, yeah, he's totally underrated. Yeah, he's totally. I'm like, after like 1,000 people say you're super underrated, maybe you're not actually all that underrated. You're just not celebrated, right? I think that might be a better term, is like uncelebrated versus underrated. Because like I feel like everybody that hears the name Lavonte David goes, oh, that dude's underrated. And I'm like, well, then maybe he's not. Javon Hargrave being on this list is really confusing me. Javon Hargrave is the 6th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. He's getting paid the same as DeForest Buckner, more than Chris Jones, more than Jonathan Allen, and more than Vita Vea. I don't know if you're underrated. Like, if that's underrated, I want to be underrated. Like, I want to be the 6th highest paid host on Locked On, and then go around telling everybody how underrated I am. And I know that Javon didn't say this, but you get my point. And then Brian Burns, James, maybe this is just because we run in NFC South circles, but I don't think Brian Burns is underrated. I think everybody pretty much knows how great Brian Burns kind of is already, and then can be moving forward. I mean, obviously his team sucks, but like he's still great, I think. But again, I mean, we talk to Panthers hosts a lot. We talk to, people who play the NFC South a lot. So maybe that's our circle bias. You know what I mean? So maybe people outside of the NFC South circles don't realize how good Brian Burns is. But we certainly do.
Yeah, I think the fact that we are so interwoven with the other NFC South hosts, that we focus on Brian Burns. We talk about Brian Burns a lot more than probably some of the other hosts do. And some of the casual fans aren't going to know Brian Burns kind of the way we do, or the way Buccaneers fans do, just because he's not kind of that everyday presence, that constant thought when the schedule comes out, like, all right, when do we got to face Brian Burns? When do we have to face Cam Jordan? When do we have to, that kind of stuff. So I think that does play into it a little bit. And also, all defensive tackles are underrated in the eyes of the national media because there's only one named Aaron Donald. And again,
about Aaron Donald,
there's only one that they can ever talk about, and that's Aaron Donald.
Yeah. Well, there's enough Aarons in the world for me right now. I think we're good. No offense to any Aarons that might be watching this program or listening to this program. You are one of the good ones. The other ones can all go away. The Bucs were already rumored to be linked to one Dallas Cowboys running back this past offseason, and now they're being linked to another one. That story is coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny picked out for us this week in eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week. Looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick in the first round and the first pick in the second round, you'll be guaranteed to have two of the surest performers by going all AFC West with Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams and Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Adams has proved he remains a reliable top selection in Las Vegas, while Mahomes will again operate with both the highest floor and ceiling among the standout luxury options at his position. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Thanks for making Locked On Bucs first listen or view today and every day. Every dayers come back tomorrow. We will wrap up the week with our pre-training camp bold predictions and for the 2023 Buccaneers season as well. Oh yeah, the Bucs. After being linked to running back Ezekiel Elliott, the monster serial eater himself, this past offseason, the Bucs are already being talked about as a favorite landing spot for the guy that replaced him, quarterback Tony Pollard. I'm just kidding. That's an inside joke. Running back Tony Pollard. Some already have some thoughts on where Tony Pollard might land in 2024 after he and the Cowboys were unable to reach an extension deal ahead of the deadline for franchise tag players to be extended on Monday. So Pollard is playing on the franchise tag this season, and he'll be looking to make big money on the open market next offseason, which is a tall task for running backs nowadays because nobody likes running backs. Running backs are apparently non-existent, and Derrick Henry disagrees wholeheartedly. But you can hear more about how running backs are victims on yesterday's WTSP Wednesday episode with the great Evan Klosky. Now, the Buccaneers are among the favorites to sign Pollard after this season, according to some who are speculating early on, which would reunite him with running back coach Skip Pete in Tampa, which I think is kind of easy, low hanging fruit or whatever. But it also makes sense, right? So some of the other teams in the running that people are talking about are, of course, the Dallas Cowboys, but also the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills, because every running back that becomes available gets tied to the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills never make a move to go get one of those running backs. Now, we are quite a ways away, James, from 2024, but it is interesting to see this kind of coming out already. What are your thoughts about Tony Pollard speculation?
I have a couple of thoughts. The first one is, why would the Jets be considered a top 5 destination for Tony Pollard when they have Breece Hall? Like, Breece Hall is fantastic. You don't need Tony Pollard as well. I realize that it's going to be the Brady syndrome that we had in Tampa for a couple of years, where every free agent is going to be linked to the Jets because they have Aaron Rodgers. That one doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, I think the Cowboys are going to be the leader in the clubhouse for that one. Dolphins make sense based on whether or not they end up landing Dalvin Cook. And then, yeah, the Buffalo Bills are always going to be linked to running backs because they don't have one. They haven't had one since basically Marshawn Lynch. And for some reason, they don't believe that Josh Allen needs any help in the run game, which is ludicrous. But here's my thing. And with the way you look at the Buccaneers run game, you have Chase Edmonds backing up Rachaad White. Rachaad White's your RB1. Like, that's pretty much it's locked and loaded for 2023, barring any injury. It's probably locked and loaded for 2024 and 2025. We will see. You have Edmonds there. He's a depth piece. Okay, cool, whatever. You have Keyshawn Vaughn looking to make a step. And then you have the undrafted rookie in Sean Tucker that the team's really high on. So if you love Rachaad White and the price tag that he comes with, you love Sean Tucker and the price tag that he comes with, you're not going to spend the money that Tony Pollard is going to command when he's really not going to do anything super duper special, like more so than Rachaad White. I'm not saying that Rachaad White and Tony Pollard are on an even playing field right now, because Pollard shows that he's one of the better running backs in the NFL, but we also don't know. Like, come the end of 2023, they could be on par with one another. Rachaad could break out in a big, big way. So to me, if the Bucs were going to spend big money on a running back, I would see them going for a bigger fish than Tony Pollard that really provides something that they don't already have.
Yeah, I mean, this is like going out there to buy like a new like fast car and then settling for, I don't want to offend anybody, so settling for like a mid-level car just because it goes a little bit faster than the car you're currently driving. Like, if you're going to go for it, go for it. You know what I mean? But if you're going to go for it, you're not going to go for Tony Pollard, even if he has a really good season. You know what I mean? Like, outside, the only way I can see the Buccaneers pursuing Tony Pollard is if Rachaad White completely bottoms out, just does not do well. And they're basically they're like, we need a running back. We don't have a running back. We now need a running back. So unless Rachaad White does something like that, which I don't foresee happening, then that's the only way I see this happening. Because when you add Tony Pollard to the mix, like you said, you're going to pay him more than you're paying Rachaad White. But Rachaad White's going to be your RB1. So your backup is going to be making more than your starter. That automatically makes no sense. Then what does Tony Pollard do that Rachaad White doesn't do? Honestly. And at least to the level where you look at that guy and you say, we need that guy. I don't think there's anything that he does. Has he done it longer? Sure. Has he done it better from a statistical standpoint? Absolutely. But Rachaad White's in his second year. Let's see what the kid has and let's go from there. So it just doesn't make sense to me, but neither do a lot of these teams. The Dolphins don't have the money to pay a running back what Tony Pollard appears to want, because they got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. If Tua works out, they got to pay him. Like, they've got a lot of guys they got to pay there. I don't think they're going for running back. And the list goes on and on. Honestly, you know who I think Tony Pollard plays for in 2024? The Los Angeles Chargers, because that's where his offensive coordinator went. They could actually use a running back like him, depending on what happens with Austin Eckler. But even without Austin Eckler, if he leaves, they're definitely going to be able to use a running back like him. And then you can draft a more powerful type of running back if you need one. Or maybe they just sign Zeke too. I don't know. Maybe just take Zeke and Tony Pollard to Los Angeles. They can play against the Chargers, and everybody can just leave Dallas and forget them and do all the things that they should have done years and years ago. Yeah, that's a lot of hate towards Tony Pollard. That's undeserved. But the bottom line is he doesn't move the needle for me personally. So I don't see the point. Again, we'll revisit this if Rachaad White has a terrible season. But if Rachaad White has even an average season, Tony Pollard, I don't imagine is going to do anything superbly superior to Rachaad that would warrant the price tag, especially when this is a team that's like $26 million in the hole next year already.
I will be going after Tony Pollard in a lot of fantasy drafts. I think he brings,
especially if you're like PPR. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But I want to take this opportunity, David. I'm going to give you fair warning. I'm going to give our listeners and our viewers fair warning.
Uh-oh.
This is 9 months in advance. If Austin Eckler hits the open market, I will not shut up about it. I will not let it go. I will talk about it every single day. I will do everything I can to convince every listener, every viewer that it has to happen, how to make it happen. And I will pound that table until my hands are bleeding.
And every time you mention it, I'm just going to stop listening.
I hope that you're right and Austin Eckler becomes a free agent, because then after all of that work that I put in, he'll end up with the Saints, and I will have a full episode of me just crying on camera for everyone.
After they release Alvin Kamara, he might end up with the Saints. He might end up with the Panthers, actually. I mean, honestly.
Or that.
I can see that happening.
Every free agent ended up in the NFC South, not in Tampa.
The Falcons like running backs. I hear the Falcons like running backs. They got like 20 of them.
I think we can rule out the Falcons in the Austin Eckler sweepstakes. But yeah, probably. Just fair warning. I will list a disclaimer and say I'm about to talk about Austin Eckler for those of you that want to fast forward the show, but that's a long ways away. As of right now, the Buccaneers have their RB1, and that man is Rachaad White, who started training camp a little bit early. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a Thursday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and Rachaad White has been extremely present on social media since becoming the top running back for Tampa Bay, and now his work ethic is starting to back up some of those posts, some of those predictions, and as a guest on the Rich Eisen show, White told Eisen that he flew his personal trainer in and began two-a-days already in preparation of the upcoming training camp and NFL season. He's spending about half of his time on running back work. He's spending the other half of his time on receiving work. White also said that he's gained about 5 pounds over his playing weight from last season, and that's by design. And it's all muscle to help with the increased workload. David, I know you love this because Rachaad is your dude, but what is your biggest takeaway from this kind of work that Rachaad is putting in already, even away from the team?
So my uneducated mind immediately says, no, don't do it. You need to preserve your body, not overwork it before you even get to training camp. And that, I hope you don't put yourself at risk for further injury. The somewhat educated part of me says, well, your personal trainer is there, and that person's supposed to be really smart about how to manage workloads. So you should be doing this safely. And I'm really, really happy to hear him say pretty much what every second-year NFL player says, and that is, I gained weight ahead of this year's training camp. Because these dudes lose a lot of weight in training camp, and I don't think a lot of rookies really understand how much weight they're going to lose during training camp. Like, I think they just think it's going to be kind of like their college camp, but it's really not. Plus, I mean, for another reason, not just the workload, but also the fact that you don't have somebody literally planning your meals for you unless you pay somebody to do that, which most of these guys don't do right off the bat. So you're also learning how to eat on your own. And, as a rookie, like, from the end of the college season, it's all-star games, scouting prep, scouting combine, interviews, visits, pro day, draft preparation, media circuits, practice, OTAs, mini camp. Like, they're just nonstop working. Like, these guys, you got to think about, like, college players, rookies start like spring practice and all that stuff, right? And then they don't stop until the offseason after their first NFL year. Like, that's how busy an NFL rookie is their first season. It's insanity. So they get a little bit of rest. They get a little bit of smarts, a little bit more smarter. That's not even a word, whatever, about what they're doing with their body. So I love that Rachaad is on that beat because it's a very good beat to be on. But yeah, that 5-6 pounds that he gained, he's going to lose 5-6 pounds in training camp. But that still means he's going to come out net positive because, if he came in his fighting weight last year, he would be even lighter. And hopefully he doesn't lose a lot of that muscle. So, no, good on him. And I like it. And it shows the thirst. It shows the hunger. It shows the drive. And it just shows why, every team should have a Sun Devil line.
Yeah, I think Rachaad White's going to turn a lot of heads this year. And if he wasn't motivated enough, if he wasn't focused enough becoming the RB1 for the Buccaneers, I have to bring it up. I have to, because I know for a fact you haven't seen this yet. Rachaad White's Madden rating is a 75. He is behind Nyheim Hines and Jeff Wilson and Kenneth Gainwell and Alexander Madison and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, this dude has to be furious about this.
Yeah. I don't know. Some of these, I think, honestly, and this just kind of shows how bad of a job EA Sports is doing with Madden. More and more, a lot of these guys don't even play it. Who was it? I can't remember who it is. No, Bucs fans don't care. There's a Commanders player that literally got told his Madden rating, didn't know it ahead of time, got told his Madden rating, said, yeah, this is why I play 2K. Just straight up. He was like, this is why I don't even play it. You know what I mean? And you got to think about, like, these are dudes that grew up wanting to be NFL players. Like, these are dudes that grew up with football. These are like you talk about diehard football people. Like, there's some of the most diehard football people you're ever going to meet, and they don't want to play your game, bruh. You know what I mean? Like, that is a problem. That's whatever, man.
Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there. I had tweeted out earlier on Wednesday that Rachaad White's strength rating better be a 99, and I posted the GIF from the Seahawks game. Yeah, it's a 71. But no, in all seriousness, I absolutely love all of this from Rachaad White, and Dave Canales is going to rely on him heavily this season. So the fact that he's bringing in his personal trainer to work on two very, very big facets of his game, things that he is going to be asked to do nonstop for Dave Canales in this offense, to add the muscle, to add, all these things to his repertoire. This shows exactly how dedicated he is to improving over last year. It shows how dedicated he is to his teammates, to his coaches, to his craft. And those are the kinds of players, regardless of if Rachaad White ends up being a top 10 running back, regardless of if we're talking 5 years from now about how underrated he is, ignore all of that. These are the kinds of players that other players want to be around. They want to be with the guys that are self-motivated. They want to be with the guys that are working their butts off because they want to make themselves better, to make their team better. Those are the teammates that are beloved in the locker room and grow into leadership roles. So my biggest thing is kudos to Rachaad White. That is a young man with a great head on his shoulders, very intelligent, wise beyond his years. And I'm really excited to see what comes of it. Of course, we're going to see him on the field here sooner than later. But for right now, that is going to do it for this episode. Coming up tomorrow, David and I will be back with our pre-training camp bold predictions for the 2023 season. So make sure you come back and check that out. But in the meantime, if you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, topics, anything like that, of course, you can email us at lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or drop them here in the YouTube comments, and we will make sure to get to those. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. Check out everything I'm doing over at Bucs Nation, everything David's doing over at Bucs Game Day. Follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.